Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome back once again to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall, and this is my co-host, Bill McIntyre. We're just two guys that discussing the issues of the day, laying out the facts of those issues, and giving you our opinion and view on those issues. We would also love it here at the We Are Marshall podcast if you would like and share all of our episodes around your social media. We can be found on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and Rumble. Rumble is where we populate our full channel with season 1 and 2 of all our episodes. Download the free app Rumble and search the We Are Marshall podcast. Then subscribe and follow to get notification of new episodes and other endeavors by Bill and I. Check out our episodes on all these social media sites and share them to help us grow. We also would love it if you would check out our website at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com. You can see a number of things Bill and I are working on the website. If you go to Bill's bio, you can click on a link to all his blog posts and check out Vella on Amazon, where Bill also writes episodic short stories for your viewing. Check out my 2 books currently for sale on Amazon. This one, The Unforeseen Enemy, and The Perception Therapist, is also on sale. Both are available now. Also, check out our sponsors, Local Prints New Hampshire. You can go to our website again at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com and click on the link to Local Prints New Hampshire on the top left. They are a full-scale screen printing company in Hampstead, New Hampshire, and they are available for domestic and international printing. Go support them as they support us. Also, check out our large sponsor, MateConnector.com, a large dating website just like all the other big dating websites out there with all the features that the big players have in the dating sphere. But Mate Connector is much more inexpensive than any of the other players in the dating market. If you have any questions or issues, you can reach us both at the following emails. Bill can be reached at bill@wearemarshallpodcast.com, and I can be reached at steve@wearemarshallpodcast.com. Now, as usual, we have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to get right to these subjects for us and get right into it. So the first topic I have here on the We Are Marshall podcast is thousands of solar panels in Texas destroyed by hailstorm. So what happened is aerial footage showed rows of cracked photovoltaic cells at the Fighting Jays solar farm near Needville in Fort Bend County. Local news channel KTRK reported on Saturday. Baseball-sized hailstones were observed falling in the area overnight, as per the Houston Chronicle. The solar project, which began producing power for Texas's energy grid in 2022, generates 350 megawatts across 3,300 acres of land and is expected to power 62,000 homes. It is one of many renewable energy installations across the state, which has championed clean energy projects in the recent years while benefiting the most from federal tax credits and incentives under the Inflation Reduction Act. Solar panels are built to be fairly durable to the elements and can continue to produce energy if damaged, but not full. Research by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory suggests hail-cracked panels have less than 4% energy loss. However, the Department of Energy notes that baseball-sized hail can have enough kinetic energy to fully break the glass on solar panels. A spokesperson for Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, one of 2 companies behind the solar farm, confirmed to Newsweek that the hailstorm had damaged some of the solar panels on the site. We are currently assessing the extent of the impact of the storm on the generation of the project while the plant continues to safely operate at a reduced capacity, they added. Newsweek also approached AP Solar Holdings, the other company involved in the project, via email for comment on Tuesday. Residents expressed concerns that the damaged panels could leach chemicals into the surrounding environment. One resident, Nick Kaminsky, said that he was worried about chemicals potentially leaking into the groundwater, which his house uses as its water supply. Quote, I have a family, 2 children and a wife, he told Fox 13. My neighbors have kids, and a lot of other residents in the area who are on well water are concerned that the chemicals are now leaking into our water tables. Mike Fuga, another resident, told the channel that he was concerned that the chemicals could have carcinogenic effects While solar panels can contain toxic substances such as cadmium, telluride, and copper, indium, gallium, diselenide, in solar cells, they are found in solid form in a thin film that usually only becomes an environmental concern when disposing of them. The CIP spokesperson said that the silicon-based panels contain no cadmium, telluride, and we have identified no risk to the local community or the environment. Didn't they say that in Palestine, Illinois, too, with the train wreck? Exactly. Experts have said that solar panels have several protective layers to avoid any substances being exposed through damage. County officials told local news outlets that hazardous materials crews had so far found no contamination in the area. The incident portrays the struggle between efforts to combat climate change and extreme weather events that global warming is predicted to increase the frequency and severity of. Droughts linked to climate change have previously led to a reduction of hydropower capacity in California, while a winter storm in Texas in 2021 crippled its power grid. Fossil fuel production in the state was also impacted by a cold snap being pushed further south than usual in 2022. Okay, the gist of this story for me is they just tell you hydropower, you have a drought, it completely destroys the energy you're generating from hydropower.
Yeah, sure.
The solar panels, they get a weather impact like this, and all of a sudden those 62,000 residents are going to be having a major problem. And what else is it going to affect that? Not just the residents, but what else is it powering in the area that does help these residents? Right. The bottom line is, as I look at things, you go with the devil that you know. We understand fossil fuels right now in a major capacity, and they are very efficient for what we need. We need to be doing better and learning more on these products. I'm not dissuading us from learning and getting better at it, but what I'm saying is we are definitively not ready for what the Democrats want to jam down our throats in spending bills and things to continue to throw money at these green initiatives that are untrue, unproven, and just not ready to be completely commercialized to save us in our energy struggles. What do you think about this, Bill?
Well, it's an interesting topic, Steve. I mean, the green energy is always something that before all these debacles started, this is not necessarily a debacle, but before the debacle started, what I came up with is that the whole notion of green energy should have been taken, just like the vaccine should have been taken. A cautionary approach, do the research, spend the time, allow the time and effort that it takes to rule out all the negatives. Okay, so this saying that the chemicals can't seep, into the ground unless the panels are completely broken. Well, they just said that a golf ball, a baseball size hailstone could completely break one of these panels. They have limitations, and good intentions sometimes aren't enough, because power has to be consistent. That's the bottom line. I always think of Liam Neeson in Taken when he's got that guy strapped to the chair and he's talking about how consistent the power grid is in France for torture. It's kind of a funny, way my mind works, but. It's interesting.
You can relate that to real life if you paid attention to the Russian military when they grabbed those terrorists that shot up that hall. Did you see what they did?
Oh boy, yeah.
They utilized electricity on one of those guys in a nefarious action.
They all looked pretty worse for the wear after the Russian police got a hold of them. But
to say the least.
No, this story it points out the fact that the technology is not there yet. Okay, Elon Musk had once talked about that you could probably put enough solar panels to power the United States in one desert in California with solar panels. And someone said, "Yeah, what about sandstorms?" Yep. And he said, "Right, with the wind in the desert and the sand blowing around, those panels will be rendered totally ineffective." So you have that, and then when you look at the environmental impact of this, where's Aaron Brockovich? Seriously, this is not going to be an environmental advantage if it has another equally devastating consequence if something go wrong with it.
And that's why I brought up Palestine, Illinois, because if you think about that, They literally said, "Oh, these chemicals aren't going to do anything. Everybody's fine," and then it became a fiasco.
Let's see the next generation of people in East Palestine, Ohio, because there's going to be some massive birth defects. The cancer rate's going to be off the chart. And our president took a year to get there. I mean, I'm not trying to make an editorial comment, but it should be thrown in there that this is what we can expect from the government response. When something does happen. All right. So this is probably the best way I can describe this segment. It's probably good intentions gone wrong. I believe in solar panels for houses. I think it's a great idea. If I was going to build a house right now, I would absolutely do it. But my mother's house way up north in New Hampshire, she wanted to do it, and they said, "Well, that's great, except for snow." Well, they got 27 inches of snow last weekend, Steve. How much power would solar panels have generated then?
But that's the thing. There are as you stated earlier perfectly. You nailed it right on the head. There are limitations. They should have taken the time. I'm just pretty much parroting what Bill said early, which made the utmost sense. Just like the vaccine, we should have played it out a little bit more. And I'm just going to end this segment with saying this, Bill. These solar panels are a fairly new technology to all of us, okay? They've been around a little while, but as they've got to the point where they are, they're fairly new. To sit there and say that they will not definitively pollute the groundwater, how can you say that?
Well, how can anybody believe it?
As they would say with the novel virus, it's a novel solar panel. So, I mean, how do you know this? You don't know yet. We're not going to know for a few years. So we'll take a look, and we'll keep watching all these green initiatives, because I've been reading about this stuff for decades. I brought this up to Bill in a story I read in Business Week, which someday I hope I can locate again, because it was fascinating on what they did with green energy in this one ski resort. But anyway, here at the We Are Marshall podcast, that's how we start the podcast out. I got another theme to get into a little deeper, what the green initiative can do, and is going to cost us down the road. But we're going to hand it off to Mr. McIntyre right now so he can take over the second issue in the We Are Marshall podcast. Go right ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Steve. You're a tough act to follow. I'm going to talk about something that we probably have seen in the news, but I think it's a story worthy of coverage because it's an extraordinary story for starters. And additionally, a little deferment to the fact that there were some lives lost, and then I'm talking about the long-term ramifications of this, and that is the bridge that went down in Baltimore. We've all seen the horrifying footage. Okay, it looked like something out of a video game. I woke up 5:30 a.m. yesterday, and I turned on the news. It's the first thing I saw. Every station was covering it. It showed this 1 mile section, well, not a complete mile, like about 3/4 of a mile section of bridge, just crumble like a broken Oreo cookie, just right into the river. But you're hit by a massive cargo ship, and the story's important to cover because there's a lot going on with it. There's I'm sorry, I just got to pull up something here. The destruction is incredible. The damage is immeasurable at this point, and it's just going to be such a massive issue going forward that I wanted to talk about it. It's an unusual occurrence, first of all, and it's a tragedy, so it's important. My daughter texted me yesterday. She caught it late, like about 2 in the afternoon. She was just horrified what she saw. So a massive cargo ship named Dolly. It's flying a Singaporean flag. It's a 906-foot ship, which is basically 6 football fields, laden with shipping containers and weighing almost 200 million pounds, 220 million pounds to be exact, was the total weight of this vessel. Struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, exiting the harbor, which contains one of the largest offloading and unloading sites, port sites in the country. It was one of the very busiest ones for many different critical products that we consume in this country. And it hit the bridge and it buckled right into the river. And there's a lot of stories surrounding it. What caused it? The video shows that the lights went on and off a couple of times. So basically, the ship was suffering electrical problems, and by the time it came back on, it did not have the ability to recover the propulsion power to change course. They dropped an anchor. But as a expert today had said, a ship of that size moving even 10 miles per hour, which it was, of course they do it in knots, but they said about 10 miles per hour. An anchor would do nothing to stop a ship with that
Which
kind of
blows
momentum.
my mind that they don't have some kind of stopgap in
Yeah,
place that could
exactly.
do that.
Because it's such an out of control vessel. I mean,
Yeah, I
that
mean,
much weight. It's like a truck. People cut off trucks. Well, a truck is an 88,000-pound GVW. It's not going to
yeah,
stop on a dime. It's
yeah,
like,
good luck. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and my father dealt with that as a truck driver. So this ship is just, it's a massive, massive thing to operate. And those seconds that it lost power when it was already off course proved to be very little effort. They sent out a mayday, and as it unfolded, if people noticed by watching the video, not a lot of cars were on the bridge. The mayday did enable the authorities to stop traffic on the bridge, and the only casualties were a construction crew repairing potholes. They weren't working structurally on the bridge; they were repairing potholes, and many of them are dead or unaccounted for. So that's a pretty tragic story.
I believe six died and
Yeah,
two survived.
that's what it is. 6 dead. Yeah, that's the latest count, and it's a real tragedy. So you got all the government agencies there. You get the governor of Delaware. You have the mayor of Baltimore, and they've been giving live updates. And the situation's evolving, but the ship is going to stay where it is until they get the debris cleaned up and they do an investigation. So I just want to walk through the actual events real quick. So first, what happened? The first part of the story was the ship reported a power issue. So at the time of the collision, the 984-foot-long dolly was leaving the port of Baltimore and bound for Colombo, Sri Lanka. Moments before the impact at 1:28 a.m., the dolly reported lost propulsion and dropped its anchor, as I mentioned, according to a statement by the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore, citing a report from the ship's management company, Synergy Marine Ltd. As a result, it was unable to maintain the desired heading and collided with the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Moore confirmed that the crew informed authorities of a technical problem before the crash. It sent out a mayday and what do you call it, a power issue. And that allowed authorities enough time, as I said, to stop vehicles from going over the bridge. But soon after that, there was another recording in which someone had said, "Oh my God, get everybody here! The bridge just collapsed. This is just a nightmare." So instead of veering away from the ship, it veered toward the pillar shortly right before impact, and which was unfortunate because it hit probably the most vulnerable spot in the entire bridge. According to a CNN analysis of marine traffic ship tracking data, any power issues may be corroborated by the footage, which showed a plume of dark smoke billowing from the ship and its lights flickering minutes before striking the Key Bridge. And the problem here is that they have footage and recordings from the brig, but they don't have anything from the engine room, and that's probably where the most help and the most answers would come from. But they don't have audio from that. So Clay Diamond, executive director of the American Pilots Association, described the issue as a total blackout of engine and electrical power. And while the lights on the ship were seen turning back on, probably to a generator, the engines never recovered, and we know the rest. What we did not know until today, that a Chilean Navy officer confirmed to CNN that the ship was actually briefly held in the country last June over a propulsion and electrical issue. So this is probably going to be a follow-up on that. There's going to be a question obviously asked of this company that owns this ship, why the ship was not repaired fully, and because this is probably the most dangerous thing that can happen to a ship is lose power. Because of the propulsion and the ability to avoid a collision of any kind, a ship is basically helpless and very deadly. So, as I said, it hit a crucial bridge support. It hit about probably the most vulnerable point in the entire bridge, as if it was planned, which of course fueled a lot of speculation about conspiracy theories. But the bridge itself is 47 years old. And is ascribed by Kathy Sliga, a member of the Maryland State House of Delegates, as not just the landmark, but it's the gateway to our port. Ships must pass beneath it to enter and exit the port, which is a major U.S. hub that generates billions in income and supports tens of thousands of jobs. The numbers are $200 million per day of revenue is generated and $2 million in payroll is paid out every single day at the Baltimore port. So the bridge is also a major artery for road traffic, linking Interstate 695 across a 1.6 mile long span of the river. And in 2023, approximately 12.1 million vehicles, roughly 33,000 a day, drove across the bridge. So it's very fortunate that they were able to not have any cars on it when this happened, according to a recent report by the authority. And the bridge generates 56.8 million in toll revenue per year. So a construction crew was on the bridge Tuesday morning, like I said, repairing potholes. There was no structural issues. That's been ruled out. The bridge's main span had two principal supports, those nearest its center, including the one struck by the dolly, said Schaefer, a Johns Hopkins engineering professor. Both are equally important and did most of the work carrying the load of the bridge's center span. He said, but the loss of one would immediately lead to the loss of the other. So it appears the ship directly struck those columns, one of those columns. At that point, as the engineer described, is not designed for that. Nothing could withstand that impact. So further into the story, NTSB is going to examine the bridge's structure. They're on site, and they're focusing now on excavating the material. The cleanup is going to take a long time. They're leaving the ship where it is for now. This is going to be a long developing story. But according to NTSB, aside from determining what occurred on board the dolly, which is the primary focus of their job, the NTSB advisor Hominy said her agent would also assess the structure of the key bridge, its construction, and whether there are other measures that should have been in place to prevent this type. And there are two. They're called dolphins and fenders. The structures aimed at redirecting ship traffic and protecting the bridge by absorbing the impact of a collision. Experts indicated.
I was just thinking that ballooning type, blow up these big fenders that can make it kind of bounce off. You know.
Yep. And they thought of it, but this bridge, unlike many bridges in the country, was not equipped with these. So it indicated that the bridge did have dolphins, while the photos taken before the bridge collapse suggested a lack of fenders, which would shield the columns themselves. And they really didn't go into what dolphins do. So they always had more information about that, but they really didn't go into it too much. Asked directly Wednesday whether the fenders were present at the key bridge. He said, I've seen the pictures. Again, we'll want to look at everything on the structure of the bridge, on the design, and then we'll have to get further information, including getting underwater to see what happened. A structural engineer named Matthew Robles would not speculate as to the apparent lack of fenders. He told CNN Tuesday, but it was possible they would have restricted the waterway, so there wouldn't be enough room for them. But he also acknowledged it was possible fenders would mitigate a collision. But then they also said, at the end of the day, no bridge, unless a fortress is built around it, could survive the impact of a $220 million pound vessel. So that's the nuts and bolts of the story. But there's some other information that may or may not be relevant, but it's good to put it out there. This is a third crash of cargo ships into bridges in 3 months. Now, I'm not suggesting a pattern of any kind. I'm not going conspiracy here. But it is a situation that has a kind of an odd frequency of occurrence, again, sending the conspiracy theories into whipping themselves with wet noodles, But in the past 3 months, there have been 3 notable instances where ships collided with bridges in different countries. We know about the Baltimore one, but also in China, in Yangzhou, a cargo ship ran into the Lingsha Bridge in the Pearl River Delta area, fracturing its structure. 2 fatalities reported, with 3 people still missing. And the fact was the vessel hit the bridge rather than its piers, indicating potential human error. And knowing China, we're probably not going to see an investigation on that. And Argentina, a large cargo ship collided with the Zarate Brazo Lago bridges crossing the Prana River, severely damaging the ship, but the bridge did not suffer terrible damage. So now you have to look at the big picture here about what this is going to mean now, because the rebuilding is going to be enormous. Joe Biden went on television today and basically just threw it all out there. He just laid all his cards on the table, for good or bad, better for worse. And he said that the federal government almost said, I want to pay for this. Okay. He came out and said that the federal government, we will take care of all of this and get it fixed, as if to instill some kind of confidence. Well, we're talking about billions of dollars here. Okay. It's significantly more difficult to build this bridge, and they're going to want to build it differently to prevent something like this happening again. and it's going to be. The question is it months? Is it years? Because there's still a lot of traffic that this bridge connected. So Baltimore is going to suffer a serious setback to this, as is the country. So you're going to have, like I said, you got $200 million a day going through there. It's mostly the auto industry and coal. But the long-term effects, the bridge collapse has immediate and far-reaching consequences. Trade, supply chains, and transportation networks. It's going to extend beyond Baltimore. It's going to affect neighboring regions and industries. And of course, recovery efforts and mitigation strategies are going to play a crucial role in how badly how quickly they get the supply chain disruptions handled. Pete Buttigieg was there today, and he's trying to assure people that they already have meetings set up and all the right minds in place to mitigate the damage overall and find different ways to get the goods where they need to be. I don't think fuel oil was one of the major items that was trafficked heavily through the Baltimore port, so we might not be seeing any gratuitous, raising of fuel prices over this, but we really don't know. But the Baltimore port is one of the busiest in the entire country. They handle 52.3 million tons of foreign cargo, nearly $81 billion worth in 2023. I guess another one is construction machinery. That's another big thing. Automobile imports is the top port in the nation for automobile shipments. It exported over 750,000 vehicles last year. And the economic impact beyond Baltimore, it's the 10th biggest port in the country. And so it's going to ripple through other ports because the other ports are going to have to absorb the difference because obviously they're rerouting ships to other ports, which are all, this is important to note, all operating at capacity because of Homeland Security measures in which ports they have to inspect many vessels that go to port. So this is going to be an ongoing, messy story. But I hope I filled in, somebody's questions about the big picture and the long-term ramifications of this. We're going to be talking about it for a long time, though. So that's what I got on that, Steve.
Well, thinking about what COVID did to our supply chain, this is going to be even worse to add on top of it, kind of like the inflation that gets added every month that everybody think is not just every added on top of each other. Right. It's just what it is every month. So this is going to be devastating, especially to a multitude of industries, as you so eloquently pointed out. But how long, I wonder how long they're going to take to build this, because this, to me, if it's as this far reaching in our economic sphere, this is something that I forget the name of the vaccine project Trump created, the name of it, right. Whatever it was. This is something that a bunch of people should come together with the Army Corps of Engineers and be able to pop this bridge up as quickly as damn possible without playing.
If they build a temporary bridge next to it, they got to do something.
Yep, this is something we should pay attention to, Bill, and see how much it takes. And the thing, I heard a rumor, maybe you didn't see this, but you didn't mention it, but I heard when the boats get in close to that bridge and whatnot, they end up being remotely controlled by someone local.
I did hear that, but I didn't really get enough information to speak of it intelligently. So
we can't definitively verify that. But it is something I heard. Maybe people should know. Who knows? Maybe it's because the local people might know the waterway a little better, where it's a little deeper, shallower, whatnot.
Well, they do have tugs, and usually, from what I understand, tugs either follow or actually push these ships out of the port under the bridge. This vessel was doing almost 10 to 15 miles per hour, so it looks like that might have been a breach, or maybe not the way we understood it to be happening. But
knowing how engineers think, I'm a software engineer, not a civil engineer, but thinking like that, this is now going to spur a new trend and a new revolution of bridges. Because they're going to start looking at this. At least I think. I mean, I have hope. In my engineering class people that they're going to look at this and say, hey, what could we have built around that so that even if a 10 million ton something hit it, we could detract it or bounce it off or lighten
some way to absorb the kinetic energy and redistribute it. Yes.
Yep. And also on top of that, with them engineers, what type of safety mechanisms will be added to these type of boats? Because let's be real, they are unwieldy. I mean, you can't stop 10 million tons unless you have something that has been built to stop that. And I don't know much about that, so I can't get in, but I hope that those two issues they are looking at and will continue.
Well, the biggest
And
thing, Steve, is that these ships are almost twice the size of what they were when the bridge was built. All right, they were.
well, I know,
Yeah, the ships are
and that's where
500 feet long, and now they're almost
so
1,000 feet long.
it's so funny you bring that up because I just had a conversation with Charlie, my daughter, tonight. She was asking about civics,
Right.
and I explained to her about how they would, look at a 93 out here and say, okay, we need to add 2 more lanes, and how they would project how long it's going to take down the road. And we hope they do this, but it doesn't seem that they do, that they will project down the road when they add those 2 lanes and it's completed. Are they going to, is that going to be able to handle the capacity of traffic that would grow over that time? Okay. So, it's funny that you mentioned that. I hope they're doing stuff like that, but I don't know. But the big thing that I want to end this with is Joe Biden has promised a million things.
Yeah.
He just says, hey, I'll just sign a check and give you this. Will they take care of the bridge, or is this typical political conjecture in an election year? Is he just saying that because you're right? I did see him how he said it. Yeah. He did. He was like, "Oh, giddy, I'll pay for this."
It's
like he's going to write it out
at the restaurant, wasn't it?
Bank of China check.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that Biden is announcing that Baltimore will now be available for mail-in ballots.
Oh,
I'm going to hell for that one, but I had to say it.
But it's so true. But good stuff, Bill. I mean, everybody's paying attention to this right now. It's in the news big time. And I actually just showed Charlie the boat hitting the bridge tonight, and she just couldn't believe it. She's like, "Thanks, Dad. Now you gave me bigger fear of bridges."
Oh yeah, my daughter was traumatized by it. That's terribly difficult for her, but she saw that and was like, "Wow,"
Yeah. But good stuff, and we've got more coming. I'm now gonna wrap up the climate stuff that I was doing previously and get a little more into it in detail. And we're going to talk about what's really going on in this net zero pursuit. So net zero, the risks and benefits for companies pledging to save the climate. Okay, corporate net zero pledges are gaining momentum, but limitations in net zero's design, as Bill and I had said, and implementation reduce impact and jeopardize progress. There are 15 limitations which are often manifest in many well-intentioned net zero initiatives. Governments and businesses have the opportunity to leverage momentum while accelerating and strengthening net zero commitments and progress towards climate sustainability. A critical mass of the world's largest companies and countries have now made net zero pledges, creating a snowball effect that will encourage others to join. As net zero rapidly becomes the standard for government and corporate commitments, it's appropriate to stop and ask, is net zero a sufficient tool to address climate change? And what does net zero offer? Ostensibly, net zero offers a goal of climate stability and an accounting system to measure progress towards that goal. It is also a platform that an expanding set of players can commit to over time. Net zero offers the abatement of climate risk for shareholders without abrupt disruption to near-term returns and reputational benefits for companies that serve customers or businesses that are climate conscious. In other words, virtue signaling. But a deeper review reveals significant limitations to the approach, which, if unaddressed, could easily misrepresent and undermine progress toward the ultimate goal of environmental sustainability. All of these can already be observed in practice. So, definitional consistency, completeness. Multiple accounting standards and varied implementations of net zero accounting create room for manipulation, misrepresenting the pace of progress, which we hear all the time. We have heard at least that the world is supposed to end 5 to 7 times in my lifetime, in my understanding.
Yeah.
So, for example, pledges that target only a subset of activities can make heavy emitting industries appear to be net zero and delay more transformative change. Also, verifiability. The verification of reported reductions and the execution of offset pledges represent an increasingly complex challenge, opening the scheme to, again, manipulation. Double counting. A single carbon offset can sit simultaneously on multiple entities' balance sheets, inflating perceived impacts, which we see all the time. Also, delayed impact. Nature-based offsets such as afforestation schemes take time to realize their
Sure.
impact, which Bill, this is what Bill and I are saying
Decades.
about the whole thing.
Yeah.
It takes time, again, to realize their impact.
Our kids might
The
see
short-
it, but
Yes, the short-term imbalances between when the offset is credited and when it yields its full benefit can lead to further climate deterioration. Postponement of decarbonization is another. Carbon offsets create an easy solution that may distract or delay companies from the hard but more meaningful and permanent work of reducing their own carbon emissions. And permanence. Carbon offsets must be maintained through proper stewardship long after they are bought to sustain impact. For example, an acre of forest sold this year as a carbon offset may be destroyed next year due to neglect, fire, or even willful action on the part of the seller. So also there's non-additivity. If buying a carbon offset leads to a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions that would have happened independently, then the offset is non-additive, or, to make it in layman's term, moot. It doesn't matter. Leakage. Attempts to reduce emissions in one location may shift emissions to another, where they are uncontrolled or uncounted. For example, a carbon offset program that safeguards an area of rainforest in the Amazon from clear cutting may result in the clear cutting of an area of rainforest in the Congo Basin. Again, economic viability, inflation of offset prices, something we're definitively dealing with now in a number of our markets. Pledges made today for carbon neutrality at a future date are effectively commitments to buy offsets at an unspecified price. However, the price of carbon offsets will likely rise in the future due to constrained supply and increased demand. This may make planned offsets economically unrealistic and result in pledges not being fulfilled.
Yep.
Another is voluntarism. Achieving a net zero planet will require 100% of companies and countries. Get that. 100%.
Yeah.
Not just
I know two who aren't going to buy into it already. So,
yeah, India and China. Let's be real. However, the elective basis of the net zero will inevitably lead to partial participation. The biggest emitters are likely to have the most intractable challenges and the least incentive to commit. There's also moral hazard. Most carbon offset solutions available today involve paying someone to not take an action, e.g., not to log a forest, which creates a financial incentive for offsetting entities to project an action they had previously not intended to take and be paid for not
that's an
taking.
incentive.
Exactly. Inequity in economic development is another one. Net zero may inadvertently restrain economic development in poorer nations by diverting a country's resources for the provision of offsets beyond its borders rather than an economic development within its borders. This in turn may create political limits to scaling the net zero mechanism. Another is oversimplification of sustainability as carbon neutrality. Many pledges today are solely focused on the reduction of carbon dioxide, despite methane and nitrous oxide having 30 and 300 times the heat trapping effect of carbon dioxide, respectively. And then again, this oversimplification of sustainability as decarbonization. The growing focus on greenhouse gas reduction goals could be self-defeating if other mechanisms of environmental degradation continue unchecked. For example, the depletion of species and destruction of natural habitats can reduce the natural buffering capacity of the planet, undermining the climate's sustainability. A goal without a path is also another one, because we have a goal, but we don't know how to get there. This is obvious. Net zero provides a goal. but not a path to achieve this goal. The complex, unprecedented, interdependent, and transformative change required to reach net zero planetary emissions may not be achievable without a coordinated transition plan and the research, investments, policies, and regulations to support it. Given these limitations, how do we harness the momentum created by net zero while evolving a more robust set of solutions? Some elements of a better path forward could include the following. Some limitations of net zero can be addressed through improved definitions and how these are applied in practice. There is also established, consistent definitions and standards like we have in any industry. Net zero emission targets must account for all GHGs, covering the full scope of activities. Okay, distinguish carbon offsets from emission reduction in our reporting of it. Carbon offsets cannot be allowed to substitute for or postpone addressing emissions. Companies should report separately their emission reductions and their offsets. This way, you're not getting manipulated data. Create robust mechanisms of verification for all this. So we need audited inventories of carbon offset resources can support a marketplace for carbon offsets that can be verified and monitored over time. We must pursue a more multidimensional view of sustainability and put in place the financial, operational, technological, behavioral, and cultural support to enable the transformative actions necessary. We should also take a multidimensional view of sustainability. Consider sustainability beyond the single dimension of carbon emissions to include all relevant factors, including other GHG emissions, species diversity, air and water quality, and nature preservation. We should also definitively develop a behavioral strategy, understand the behavioral economics of decarbonization, and put in place the right nudges, sticks, and kicks to encourage the desired human behaviors, ensure sustainable economics for decarbonization and offsets, expect carbon economics to shift over time as demand for offsets and sustainable inputs create new scarcities and price inflation, and bake this into pledges and projections. We should also develop transition paths because no plan goes according to how it should. So identify the major economic, technological, and societal shifts we must make collectively to provide the foundation for individual agents to meet their net zero targets, coordinate and sequence these shifts to enable large-scale change. And then by doing this, we should accelerate innovation, accelerate the pace of discovery, scaling, and adoption of innovative solutions through increased funding, private and public partnership, and international cooperation. Decarbonization requires better and more cost-effective solutions than we have now and is therefore as much an innovation as an execution challenge. Now, what this thing's basically, I'll sum it up for you, these offsets. Companies and governments can pay to get these offsets, to get breaks on their carbon footprint at this time for them to do better in the future, okay? And this is what they're saying. There's no way to audit. There's no way to gauge it. We don't have a path of sustainability. We don't have a path of how to transition to this and keep it going in the direction that we do. We don't have a path of a solution in the end. What's the end game? How are we going to get there? What are the technologies?
We know when we're there.
How do we know when we're there? And basically what I'm getting at, I know that was a lot of technical information, but it was a lot of good stuff to basically show you, this is in their own words, by the way, that we are not there as Bill and I were telling you. We're trying to find ways to offset it now with these offsets and make it look like we're doing more with this data that gets manipulated and biased and all kinds. We're not there. This information in these reporting we're getting, they just tell you when their own thing is manipulated, unverified, unaudited. They don't know which direction, like Bill said, if it's even working at any time. I mean, we need to pump the brakes a little bit here, okay? We're going in the right direction to try to find some of these technologies, but for someone like, let's say, Biden and Gavin Newsom to say, By 2035, we should be selling no more new combustion engines. It's ludicrous. We're not prepared for it. I understand that we're trying to get there, but we're not even close. So, what do you think on this, Bill?
This is a long one, Steve. I'm going to try to keep. I'm going to make a few points, but I have nothing to argue with there. Obviously, the problem is that the one common denominator in all of this is it requires it to be monitored by people, and people are humans. Human nature is very simple. Uh, Unless you can force people to comply, human nature is going to be Animal Farm all over again. It's going to be, well, no, we're the smartest ones in the play in the farm. No, we're the smartest ones, and we're going to take the lead in this, and you're going to this and that. Well, if we already know that 2 or 3 countries, look at Russia, for example. Russia's in a military expansion, a nuclear expansion, a world domination. Look at the environmental destruction that war causes. Look at the environmental destruction that weapons production causes, industrial acceleration. So Russia trailing India and China for being polluters. Without those 3, on board, nothing can happen, because we already said that has to have 100% participation. So it's already a losing proposition going right out of the gate. Okay, human nature
for us.
Human nature is always going to be like that. We cannot count on people to do the right thing, because little things like padding pockets and obviously wealth generation are always going to be the things that are going to throw things off. But a couple of things struck me as particularly interesting. One of them was the moral hazard, which I said was an incentive. Okay, moral hazard, is I want to look up the right here. I found some of your sources there. Most carbon offset solutions available today involve paying someone to not take an action, which creates a financial incentive for offsetting entities projecting that. That is the same thing as paying our farmers not to grow wheat so we can buy it from Russia as a diplomatic gesture. It's the same thing. Okay, it's the exact same thing. And there is never productive outcomes when you pay someone to not do what they're trained and probably in some cases born to do. The other thing is that you talk about leaking. And leaking is in the system that you, as you described, in which you talk about how you can't count on the fact that someone outside your purview is doing the same thing, or that you can't shift environmental responsibilities outside of your purview and pretend they're not there. Well, okay. Well, China is the #1 producer of electric batteries in the world. Okay. Well, a lot of people in this country drive electric cars, say, "Oh, electric cars are fine." Yeah, because all the environmental damage that comes with electric vehicles, coal plants, emissions. All right. There's a plant that is building electric batteries that the power requirements were so underestimated. They have to build their own coal plant to power the electric battery plant.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that coal still cooperates with electricity?
Yeah. No. People don't. I guess it never occurred to them that at some point, a fossil fuel source is being consumed and generating emissions to produce your zero emission vehicle. So you may not be producing the emissions, but somebody is, and sometimes in more cases. So then you look at the environmental impact. I know I harp on this, but the mining process of lithium is just destroying the earth. Okay, you have to mine 50 tons of material to get enough lithium to make a 1,000 pound battery, which is the average size of a car battery, not an F-150, not a trailer, a semi-trailer. These are all massive undertakings that, yeah, okay. So you can say right now that you and your little beautiful little town, you're not generating emissions, but somebody generated them for you, and the people of China and India are breathing that air. So again, people are going to find a way to make it just like no more prisons, somebody else's backyard, get it out of here, and then feel all good about their efforts. This is just too contingent upon things going too perfectly. And you stole my thunder a little bit when you mentioned Gavin Newsom. Okay, yeah, not all cars, but all vehicle sales, new vehicle sales will be electric by the year 2035. Okay, you have no power grid in California.
Exactly.
So how are you going to power these vehicles when you have clearly an intention of having? They'll never have a complete monopoly of electric vehicles, but as you phase out, the gas vehicles in the favor of the electric ones. If you have 75% of the vehicles in California, and there are tens of millions of vehicles in California, all right, how are you going to power them all? You're going to have to build more coal plants. You're back to square one. This is
the whole gist of this is exactly what we're both saying. We're not ready. I like the idea that we're moving towards this to help us have a better environment. Okay, great. All right. I don't think we're as daunting to the environment as people seem to think. You and I differ on
that one, Steve. And I respect what you say. Yeah. But I personally think that reducing my carbon footprint is the best that I can do. The less single-serve bottles that I consume and throw away into the landfills, the less fuel that I burn, the more economic, as far as fuel economy vehicle I drive. That's my little way of doing things, and that's probably what, if everybody was thinking like that, would probably make more impact over time than a lot of these initiatives, because I just don't see them working. I just don't.
I disagree, though. This is the whole thing. Like we're talking about, because think about this. All right, let's say here's our house, okay, and China lives on our right, and India lives on our left. You and I manicure the house, paint it up nice. We take care of the lawn. We put the lawn. It looks beautiful.
Out front. Yep,
but on our right and on our left, the grass has grown so high that pygmies can hide in it. Okay, that shit's coming over into our yard, Bill.
Right.
There's no so what's the point if we do all that and they're not? That's the whole point.
All that. I'm talking about making minor changes in behavior.
What you're doing is futile, is my point.
I don't think so, because it's still one less bottle in the landfill. That's how I look at it.
It's futile, dude. That's like saying one less bottle is going to save India dropping 100 million a day.
But if a million people do it, it adds up to a little bit of a reduction in some of the things that we're suffering from. Okay. You and I differ on pollution. I think that we have a lot of pollution, and I think that's avoidable. But the people.
Well, there are things that we can do better, like I said, but I just don't think it's going to be solved.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm not suggesting that we're going to solve anything, Steve. I'm only saying we make it a little bit better and more realistically.
It's not. Well, making it better is a solution. It's not gonna. That's my point. But I don't want to keep banging this because we're going to visit this.
That's a good conversation. I like to have that, though.
From now until November, because let's be real, it's going to come up.
Oh, God,
these green initiatives that he's spending a bunch of money on are going to come up in the election. So I want to move on. We're running a little behind here, so we're going to pick it up a little bit here. We're going to hand it over to Bill at the We Are Marshall podcast. If you have any questions or issues about anything we're discussing today or in any other podcast you watch or listen to, you can reach Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com. And, of course, you can reach myself anytime, Steve at wearemarshallpodcast.com. Go right ahead with your next segment,
Steve, thank you.
You got it.
I came into – I figure we're going to talk about election issues. Let's talk about the economy, okay? I came across – and that's another natural disaster, so it's kind of a theme. I came across an opinion piece today written by Ted Jenkins. It was submitted to Fox News. And it's an interesting concept. What pawn shops know about the economy that Biden doesn't? Okay, so you have people out there who are touting numbers, and they're doing what we talked about a couple weeks ago, in which they don't recognize that any increase or decrease is not an overall increase or decrease. It's just in addition to the last reported number. People think that things are fine. People who are being told that, the economy is good. Well, this is an interesting barometer, if you will, of how the economy is actually doing. This is an opinion, but it's backed by research that he did. He said that it starts off monkey see, monkey do. It's an old saying that implies the act of imitation, usually with limited knowledge and concern for the consequences. And Americans are following the government's lead closely by far outspending their means, racking up more than $1 trillion of credit card debt is a good example, with an average of $5,733 per credit card holder. Now, that's a scary number, especially if you factor in how many of those people are low income when they don't have bank accounts and different things, okay? So the only problem is that Americans don't have an unlimited printing press like the government does, and pawn shops across the country are telling the real story of what's happening in this economy. A pair of brass knuckles and a gold nugget are necessary just to make next month's rent. So President Biden and the White House are telling America the economy is booming. And there are indicators that things are going good. The job market, if you don't read the metrics, looks promising. That's one thing. The stock market almost hit, the Dow almost hit 40,000 today. That's another thing that could give you confidence in the economy. But the challenge is that most Americans aren't concerned about the stock market. They're concerned about their own personal economy. And here are a few highlights of the gloomy Bidenomics forecast. A 2023 survey conducted by payroll.org highlighted that 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 78%. That's up 10% from one year. Auto loan delinquencies, which you and I worked in a collection, a finance company. Auto loan delinquencies have hit a 13-year high. That's the highest rate since the last quarter of 2010, when there was a collapse of the credit industry, as you know. All right, because you were in the collections industry for a while. Student loan debt is at $1.74 trillion in 2024. And year over year, hardship withdrawals from 401ks, which, as we all know, is something you never want to do, is up 36% in 1 year. Now, that's a staggering number. People hitting their savings, their long-term retirement plan, just to pay their bills. So what can pawn shops tell us about the state of the economy in America that cannot be told by the White House? Most Americans don't have $1,000 in a bank account, and 20% of Americans don't even have a bank account. Pawn shops often act like a rainy day fund for those who don't have a bank account, a credit card, or are following woefully behind in their bills. Pawn shops across America say right now they have a glut of inventory. More people are pawning and less people are buying and recovering. So when there are few buyers and sellers, it's a clear sign that lower middle class families just don't have enough money to get by and pay their bills. Loans typically last 30 to 90 days, but right now customers are pawning and not coming back to reclaim what they pawned. It paints a story of many families who are getting deeper and deeper into a black hole of debt. So he offers a little insight on why people are so gloomy about the economy. And more numbers, Steve. These are staggering. In December 23, wages were reported to be up by 4.3% year over year. All right, we heard that number, right? We heard them touting this as Bidenomics. Wages are up. Okay, yes. But these are pre-tax wages. And by the time hardworking middle-class Americans pay federal, state, Social Security, and Medicare, they're barely up 3% in real after-tax wages. So when you factor...
Then add in...
Yep. When you factor in inflation year over year, most middle-class families are actually going backwards. It's also hitting retired Americans whose 3.2% cost of living adjustment in 2024 is enough after taxes to keep pace with inflation. And with gold hitting an all-time high of $2,200 an ounce, First Cash Holdings Inc., one of the largest publicly traded pawn shop corporations, I never knew there was a pawn shop corporation, reported record pawn receivables and a 10% increase in inventory. This data tells us that the cost of basic food, eating out, and basic entertainment are sending people into a tailspin of debt that many won't recover from without some kind of personal bailout. Okay, these numbers really, really disturb me. These are year over year. These paint, and I know this is not necessarily the most factually based article. This is based upon talking to pawn shop and pawn shop corporations, like I said, that I know about. But it does make sense, Steve, because I think that here in Middle America, where Bidenomics is really, just a buzzword, I see this. I see people who are struggling. I see my son who's got a really good job, and his fiance does too, and they're looking at that idea of buying a house as a pipe dream. They know what stuff costs, and savings are way down, and everything is just so much more expensive. And yet we're being told how fine everything is. I'm not going to rail against this, but Jesus Christ, people, I got to ask you, is your life really, at least economically, is your life better than it was 3 years ago? Almost 4 years ago?
All right, so let's look at this. And it's funny that you did this segment today, because I had an exchange with someone that I'm probably going to get into right now a little bit to explain to you. But I did watch someone today, which was pretty fascinating. I'm glad you brought up that information about your daughter, and her fiance, because this guy broke down, a financial expert today, what it is to be able to buy a house in America today. The average price of a home today is $400,000. Okay, if you wanted to buy that home today with the interest rates that are where it is and everything, you would have to make no less than $100,000 a year. On top of that, you can have zero debt with that $100,000, or you can't get into that house. If you have any debt, you're going to have to pay about $140,000 to get into a $400,000 house. The American dream is dead.
Yep.
Okay. Then there was this that I saw today. I saw this picture, and it had better off than 3 years ago. You might have saw it. It had overall prices up 17%, food costs up 25%, gas prices up 40%, credit card debt, as you got into, up 46%, home sales down 26%, and real wages down 2%. So I was having an exchange with someone, and I said, that's what you voted for. It is fleecing America, and all you people care about are mean tweets. Think of the people with less money than you that this is destroying their lives. So I get responses like, the global economy and supply and demand dictate the price of gas, food, less inventory for housing pushes prices up. The same picture could be used in about every country. Did Biden do that too? Trump gave $519 billion in PPP loans like candy. Everyone complaining about student loan forgiveness, people that paid on their loans for 10 years, yet some dude in Arkansas with a lawnmower got $25K PPP loan forgiven for his landscape company. These people couldn't work. And this is what someone on the left is saying. What are they supposed to do? Just shutter their businesses, lose all those employees, let them go? I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's the thing. They don't care.
So people got all this free money and free rent housing during the pandemic, then thereafter. Once that money train derailed, how anyone could not see the backlash of the pandemic was inevitable, I don't understand. Okay? And I get into it, I'm like, printing money the way they did is what happened. You can't print money to chase goods that are not needed. And I get, and then I get, the U.S. isn't the only country contending with increasing prices that are squeezing household budgets. Countries around the world, it's not just the U.S. And I said, they printed money too, those countries, and who cares about their economies? You are a U.S. citizen. What they do in their country isn't here. You will defend. She's defending Biden. And then the bottom line of this whole thing, she continued to say that, yeah, alas, your grocery bill, rent or mortgage, gas, the president does not have control over any of this. The U.S. does not have petrol control.
What?
That's a lie. The petrol is us. Exactly.
Production.
This is what I'm that I'm telling you that is just
another white liberal. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And then I say, then she's trying to say that doesn't affect the country. I go, wrong. That stuff gets transported all over the country, so it's affected. And I end this thing pretty much saying, Trump the man won't change us, okay? But people he puts in place will do better. And I keep telling everybody I talk to about this. I don't know if we've talked about this, but this is something we need to look at. You look too much at the politician and not the outcomes. We were better off without all the Dems regulations 3 years ago.
So what I'm getting when he was president, it really was.
People need to stop voting for a person, a woman or a man that's a politician. Focus on the outcomes you'll get from whoever it is. We don't care who it is. It's the outcome that's important.
Stupid.
I'm just going to good idea with the pawn thing, because that is a good gauge. I get it. It really makes sense, and people should pay it.
I got to tell you. It really did.
Yeah, and it's kind of common sense when you think about it, but I never thought of it till you brought it up. But that's good stuff, Bill, here at the We Are Marshall podcast. We're going to move right into our This Day in History that Bill usually educates.
Steve, with time constraints. Why don't you go right to your feel-good story?
Okay, we'll end the podcast here on this, and I will jump right into my feel-good story that I found today, which is new in the news and something that transpired. So here at the We Are Marshall podcast, we always end it with a human interest story, a technological breakthrough, a healthcare breakthrough. And this is one I just thought, based upon the recency of this, that we should bring it up. So Moscow teens saved over 100 from attack on Crocus City Hall. And that was the the terrorist attack that just transpired. And if you saw the video, it is
It's horrifying.
unbelievably awful. Yeah, but 2 Russian schoolboys working as cloakroom attendants when the recent terrorist attack occurred at Moscow's Crocus City Hall have been hailed as heroes for assisting in the rescue of hundreds of fleeing concert goers. Islam Khaliklov, 15, and Artyom Donskoy, 14. So 15 and 14, good for them, were awarded medals for bravery in a ceremony by Russia's Commissioner for Children's Rights. On March 22nd, gunmen stormed the Crocus and began firing on those attending a rock concert and setting fire to the theater. Halivov, an immigrant from the Central Asian nation of Kyrgyzstan, told reporters he thought that some workers were doing noisy repair work in the hall, but realized something was wrong when people came running. He and Donskoy helped lead the fleeing attendees away from dead-end hallways and locked maintenance doors and out through the exits. I understood that if I didn't react, many people, including me, would lose their lives, Islam said. According to the BBC, he added that he was the last to exit the venue so that I did not leave anyone behind. The attack is believed to have been perpetrated by 4 men from the majority Muslim country of Tajikistan. The Grand Mufti of Russia, an important Islamic religious leader named Ravo Gaynuddin, said young Khalaf, who is also a Muslim, would be presented with the Medal of Muslims of Russia during Friday prayers this week. A reward was also forthcoming to the young man from the popular Russian rapper Morgenstern, who said he would send the boy 1 million rubles, which equals to $10,900 to say thank you. Thank you. So that's where we are on this. And I thought that was a good story just because that video of what went on was awful. And when you think of it, yeah, they're concert goers or at a concert. They don't know the labyrinth of hallways and doorways. They could have pinned yeah, because that's what they do. They would have pinned. They could have pinned them in some room where they were locked in.
They could have been thinking about themselves too and just run. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was wonderful to see these 2 young kids too. And it's also, in my opinion, wonderful to see Russians because we have a bad depiction of Russians in general. And this is what people need to see. It's not this citizenry. It's this dictator leader Putin that's doing these things.
The lead story Monday on our last podcast was a story about how people are generally more amiable than the media. Let's face it, the media, the people who tell us how things are, would depict it, okay?
Yes.
We need to look for the good, and we need to look at Russians like everybody else. They're people with families and lives, and they want the same thing everybody else does: food, shelter, happiness, if they can get it, okay? And the only good thing, and this is probably sounds like a moronic statement, but the only thing good about a tragedy is the good that might emerge from it, okay? And this.
Well, that's what we can only hope, that we get one good. This
is a very bright spot in a very, very dark situation, and it's good that the youth, that people our age tend to, we just kind of dismiss them and say, oh, this, every generation is lost because they weren't raised like we were. There's still some surprises out there. So that's a great story.
100%. Thank you. Okay. That's the end of the podcast. We appreciate y'all coming out, listening, watching, whatever you do to do this, and pay attention to the message that we're sending out there. And as you can see, we're just trying to look at issues, break them down, and tell you how we're looking at them. So maybe it will open your eyes to even send us an email, give us a chat, and tell us, hey, we're a little misguided on something. Do you ever think of this avenue? And we're all open for that. We'd appreciate that. But thank you once again for listening in or watching the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall, and this is my co-host, Bill McIntyre. We're just 2 guys discussing the issues of the day, laying out the facts of those issues, and giving you our opinion and view on these issues. We would also love it here at the We Are Marshall podcast if you'd like and share all of our episodes, as we stated, around your social media. We can be found on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and I must admit, Truth Social, Trump owns Truth Social. It's like Facebook. He had a $3.5 billion investment in that. That's what his investment was worth. And today, the second day of Truth Social going public, Truth Social is now worth 40% more than it was the day it went public. So I don't think Trump's worried about too much about
Legal fund
$175
just took
million.
a massive influx.
It's big time. Just wanted to point that out there at the end. But anyway, go check. We're also on Rumble. Rumble is where we populate our full channel with season 1 and 2 of all of our episodes. So download the free app Rumble and search the We Are Marshall podcast. Then subscribe and follow to get notification of new episodes and other endeavors by Bill and I. Check out our episodes on all of these social media sites and share them to help us grow. We would also love it if you would check out our website at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com. You can see a number of things Bill and I are working on the website. If you go to Bill's bio, you can click on a link to all his blog posts and check out Vella on Amazon, where Bill also writes episodic short stories for your viewing. Anything new there, Bill, yet?
Yep, I just published the 4th installment of my series called The Lake Walk.
Well, jump right in there, people, and check out some of this creative writing by Bill. It's very interesting.
A little
and also check out my. That's all right. Check out my 2 books that are on sale on Amazon. This one here I have, The Unforeseen Enemy and The Perception Therapist, which was released a few weeks ago. Both are available on Amazon now. Also, check out our sponsors, Local Prints New Hampshire. You can go to our website again at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com and click on the link to Local Prints New Hampshire on the top left. They are a full-scale screen printing company in Hampstead, New Hampshire, and they are available for domestic and international printing. So go support them as they have supported us. Also, check out our large sponsor, MateConnector.com. A large dating website just like all the other big dating websites out there with all the features that the big players have in the dating sphere. But Mate Connector is much more inexpensive than any of the other players in the dating market. If you have any questions, as we always tell you, or issues, we'd love for you to reach out to either one of us, Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com, and of course me, Steve at wearemarshallpodcast.com. Thank you for coming out. We'll see you again soon, and we appreciate anything that you donate your time.